Friends, gather round because it's time to talk tariffs, those pesky little taxes on imports that have the uncanny ability to send the global economy into a tailspin. And boy oh boy, did things get interesting in April 2025, when the Trump administration, facing a trade deficit larger than a Kardashian's walk-in closet, decided to take action. See, in 2024, the U.S. trade deficit ballooned to a staggering $1.2 trillion. That's trillion with a T, like the amount of times you've probably yelled at the TV during a political debate. Now, the Trump administration, never one to shy away from a bold economic move or a tweet longer than 280 characters, declared a national emergency. This, they argued, was no ordinary trade gap. This was an existential threat to the American economy, a drain on American jobs, and, quite possibly, the fault of those meddling Canadians. Okay, maybe not the Canadians, but definitely someone else's fault. Thus, the stage was set for the grand unveiling of the new tariff policy. Buckle up, folks, because this is where things get really wild. The initial plan, announced in early April, was like a scene out of a chaotic game show where the contestants are countries and the prize is economic stability. Imagine this: a 10% tariff slapped onto virtually every single import entering the United States. Think of it as a participation trophy tariff, only instead of a plastic statue, it's a hefty tax burden on American businesses and consumers. But wait, there's more. On top of this blanket tariff, certain countries were singled out for some special treatment. China, in particular, found itself on the receiving end of a whopping 125% tariff, a number so big it makes even the national debt seem like pocket change. It was like the trade war equivalent of bringing a bazooka to a knife fight, and the world watched in stunned silence, wondering if someone had accidentally hit the economic chaos button. However, just when everyone was bracing for the worst, the administration pulled a move that can only be described as a tariff tango. In a stunning reversal, they announced a 90-day pause on the additional tariffs for most countries, reverting to the universal 10% rate. It was like watching a bull in a china shop suddenly transform into a graceful ballerina, leaving everyone wondering if they were hallucinating. Now you might be thinking, why on earth would anyone intentionally play economic hot potato with the entire world? Well, according to the Trump administration, these tariffs were not about starting a trade war, but rather about righting past wrongs and securing a more prosperous future for America. They argued that for too long, the U.S. had been on the losing end of unfair trade deals, with other countries taking advantage of its generosity while simultaneously laughing behind its back. The tariffs, they claimed, were a necessary tool to level the playing field. They were meant to protect American manufacturing jobs, which had been dwindling like the number of people who still use fax machines. The goal was to incentivize companies to bring production back to American soil, resurrecting the glory days of factories humming with activity and workers whistling cheerfully as they cashed their paychecks. It was a vision straight out of a campaign rally, full of promises of a revitalized American economy where jobs were plentiful and the only thing being imported were compliments from envious foreign leaders. The initial announcement of the tariffs sent shockwaves through the global markets, causing more volatility than a caffeine-fueled squirrel in a stock exchange. The Dow Jones Industrial Average plummeted faster than a skydiver with a faulty parachute, shedding hundreds of points in a matter of hours. Investors, caught off guard by the sudden escalation in trade tensions, reacted with the kind of panic usually reserved for fire drills and the release of new Taylor Swift albums. But just when it seemed like the economic sky was about to fall, the revised tariff plan emerged, bringing with it a collective sigh of relief from Wall Street to Main Street. The markets, like a roller coaster climbing back up after a terrifying drop, rebounded with surprising vigor. The Dow Jones regained most of its losses, and investors, their nerves slightly less frayed, cautiously dipped their toes back into the market. Of course, no good trade war is complete without a little international intrigue, and the 2025 tariff saga delivered on that front in spades. The European Union, initially ready to unleash a retaliatory tariff storm of its own, decided to hold fire for the 90-day pause, adopting a wait-and-see approach that could only be described as cautiously optimistic. Meanwhile, Canada, our friendly neighbors to the north, wasted no time in firing back, imposing tariffs on U.S. goods with the speed and precision of a seasoned lumberjack wielding an axe. China, facing the brunt of the tariff assault, responded with a mixture of economic countermeasures and diplomatic side-eye. Travel warnings were issued, American film imports were slashed, and whispers of rare earth mineral embargoes, the economic equivalent of cutting off someone's Wi-Fi, filled the air. The global trade landscape, once a relatively predictable network of interconnected economies, suddenly resembled a high-stakes poker game, with each nation holding its cards close to its vest, unsure of who would blink first.